Hello. I already explained this in the last video, but for those who didn't see it, or for those who are watching on YouTube, I have decided to separate the worship videos outside of the main study video, so I'm not gonna get hit by like the copyright thing. Facebook is like a little bit more lenient about playing music on here, but when I upload it to YouTube, it's like very much that they're very notorious about not liking that. So just to get around that, I'm just gonna like live edit the worship songs out so I don't have to deal with that. But for those of you watching on YouTube right now, I have in the description a link. There should be like a little like quiet worship link and a loud worship link. If you would like to pause the video right now. Okay, probably not right now because you don't know what you're doing. But if you want to pause the video and click on the quiet worship link, then you can do that, and then you can listen to the whatever worship song that we were listening to for the quiet worship. I highly recommend doing like a breathing exercise while you do it, you know, like just deep breaths or like mindful breaths or whatever. But you do you. It's a quiet worship. Do what feels right to you on that one. But you can do that. And then when you're done listening to that song, then you can come back to this video and continue to watch it. And then the same goes for the end of the video. You can find the link for the loud worship song and jam out to that. So that's how we're gonna do it now. And you know but you know, if that's not something that you want, if you want to like have it all be in one go, then I highly recommend that you watch the actual Facebook Live videos, because that's where we do it together. You know, it's like you can only get it on Facebook Live. So I'm gonna do like a Facebook Live video where we're doing the quiet worship song all together, and then you can and then I end the video, and then I do this video. So if you want to do like a worship thing together where you get like the breathing exercise, the worship, and then like the little prayer before we do the study, then you know, stay tuned for the Facebook Live videos. I am also going to keep the Facebook Live videos posted, so you know, if you can't make it to the 6 p.m. like right away, no worries, they're still there. So you can just do it that way. Yeah. So I hope that made sense. I'm very bad at like speaking off the cuff, so sometimes what I say doesn't make sense, but I hope that made sense. That's why I write everything down. Speaking of writing everything down, let's get into the study now. So we're doing chapter 4 now. Hi, bunny. We're doing chapter 4 ESV. No one said anything against me doing like the integrated like reading and teaching, and then reading and teaching, and then reading and teaching. So that's what we're gonna do now, and that's what we're doing currently. So let's just get into it. Chapter 4 ESV. Hopefully my dogs are relatively quiet, and maybe you're not even picking up the background noise, but I'm pretty sure you are, cause it's very loud. Okay, chapter 4. Now Adam knew Eve, his wife. That phrase, knew his wife, is just like a polite way of saying that they got freaky. So just keep that in mind, you know, if you see that. I mean, I feel like it's pretty obvious from the context, but just to make clear to everyone. Continuing. And she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. So, the name Cain actually means I've got him, or here he is, which implies she thought Cain was the Messiah prophesied in the last chapter, which is just adorable. Because instead of being the savior of all mankind, he became the world's first murderer, and a very egomaniacal one at that. I think there's actually a good chance that because Adam and Eve thought Cain was the Messiah, they maybe treated him like he was special, like maybe too special, like maybe he was a little spoiled, and he probably became very entitled because of it, which would explain the series of events and his overall attitude after this. It's just speculation, like my personal speculation, but if it's true, it would be a tale of caution to always check your kid's ego. You know, we all know that like our kids are our kids are literally the best kids out of all the kids, you know, especially the firstborns. You know, I would know, I'm a firstborn myself and I'm the best, but you know, the world doesn't see it that way, and neither does God, really. Like, God loves all his kids equally, and he will absolutely make them go through a humbling process if necessary, and humility is in fact necessary to be right with God and others. Like, you can't just be like, oh, no, just have this like pride ego problem all the time. So I think we all want to believe that we're better than everyone else, or special, because, you know, of our own human insecurities. We don't want to have to be dependent on anyone or anything. We idolize our own abilities instead of idolizing God. We need to recognize that we are all lacking, and I'm not trying to say that in like an emotionally manipulative way, like a lot of advertising companies do, or even some prosperity gospels. It's something we all know. I think like it's just an instinct that we all have, you know, regardless of your beliefs. But like, no company can sell you the thing that we all need, because what all we really need is God, and God is free, baby. So that's how trying to make a quick point about hyping up your kids too much can turn into a mini gospel session. You know, everything ties into the gospel. But yeah, you know, humble your kids before God humbles them for you, you know, preferably before they start murdering people. Moving on. And again, she bore his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. There's some scholars that think the offering place was actually at the tree of life, since, as we said before, the angel guarding the tree is only used for meeting places with God. I'm a little confused by that, since Adam and Eve were very famously banished from Eden, I thought, you know, but maybe that didn't apply to Cain and Abel. And, you know, the angel probably wouldn't let them eat from the tree regardless. So I guess that's possible. I'm not completely convinced, but it is definitely possible. And anyways, sorry. Moving on. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. Now, there's no way of knowing how Cain and Abel knew how God felt about their offerings. If you subscribe to the Tree of Life theory, possibly the angel would accept the stuff that was acceptable. Later chapters describe fires coming from heaven and consuming the pleasing offerings, so it could have been that. It doesn't super matter. The important thing is they knew how God felt about it afterwards. There's some people that say Cain wasn't giving the best of his fruits and veggies to God, and that's why God didn't like it. Possibly even God only wanted the lamb offerings and looked down on Cain's plant-based diet. I don't think that's true though, especially because we see in books like Leviticus that grain and other plant offerings they were absolutely acceptable offerings. I think it's possible Cain maybe wasn't giving the best of the best, maybe keeping the best for himself, but knowing Cain's need for approval, I think it's more likely he was making the absolutely most flashiest, most visually pleasing fruit spread possible, as a way to show off what he could do. Some scholars would even argue that Abel's lamb sacrifice was probably very messy by comparison, a lot of blood and guts. Though he was burning up some lamb fat, which is basically bacon, and God loves the smell of bacon. It's a fact. I think it's like Leviticus 3:16 or something. God says it's like a pleasing aroma, so it's a factual biblical statement. So bacon lovers out there, you all have the same tastes as God, apparently. Anyways, we should also note the foreshadowing of Abel sacrificing a firstborn lamb, like blood of the lamb, like it's all very holy stuff, which maybe God appreciated that also. But either way, I think most theologians agree that the real reason God didn't approve of Cain's offering was because he gave it to keep up appearances. It was probably out of pride and ego, or maybe it was just a little bit of legalism, it's just something he had to do. Considering that Cain was really upset that he was rejected from it, I don't know that it was necessarily a oh, I just have to do it and I don't even care. Clearly he very much cared, so it was probably more of a pride thing. Very much like the Pharisees, who would pray very loudly and eloquently in public so everyone would know they were very spiritual and all that. Abel, on the other hand, gave out of faith and love for God. While his parents, they almost definitely loved him, perhaps. They gave a little bit more attention to Cain. Again, this is just my own personal speculation, because they thought Cain was the Messiah, and maybe that humbled Abel a little bit, made him lean on God a little bit more. So I'm just, again, speculating onto why Abel was better than Cain. But I do want to be clear, though, raising your kids a certain way doesn't guarantee salvation for them. Plenty of spoiled kids have come to God, and plenty of lonely kids have lost their faith. However you raise them will certainly encourage them in a certain direction, but the responsibility is ultimately on them. The truth is written on all our hearts, and no outside force can fully prevent us from acknowledging it. So don't feel too bad if your kids are heathens. It's probably not entirely your fault. Excuse me. So moving on. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? And why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it." So this is just God warning Cain, do not let anger and jealousy take over, as it will lead to sin in his life. Don't be a slave to sin. Be a slave to God, and even in the beginning of the Old Testament, I think it's just interesting, even before Jesus, we see that we've always had the power to rule over sin, with the help of God. There was just a lot more animal sacrifice involved back then. But if we just listened to when God convicted us, then we'd be good. But But Cain did not do that, as we will see. So what did Cain do? Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother and killed him. Oh no. So you can really see the manifestation of sinful rage here. And I say sinful rage because, there is like a holy righteous rage, if there's like some kind of injustice happening or some theological abomination, I don't know, then there is like, you've seen it from God even, like there is like a good time and a reasonable time to be like super angry. Most of the time it's not a good time. But in this passage you do see it is a sinful rage. Something doesn't go your way, you get angry, it festers, and then you lash out. And rage never comes from nowhere. It's always a process, and it's important to recognize when it's starting up so you can nip it in the bud, as God advised Cain initially, and only if Cain listened. But now maybe if we're to be generous, we could say Cain was maybe trying to talk to Abel about his struggle with God and maybe get some tips, about how to deal with it. And maybe Cain didn't like what he heard and it just escalated into murder. But I think this is just that whole he talked to him and they went into the field. That's more premeditation, if anything. And I think most scholars agree that was premeditation. Cain talked to Abel trying to act friendly and guided him to a field where they'd be alone, and then just whacked him. So and even though this was the first murder in human history, allegedly, people were killing animals way before this, so it's not like Cain didn't have an idea of what would happen to Abel if he hit him hard enough. So it's just the sense that you get from this, you really, reading into it, it really does feel like Cain was trying to kill his brother that entire time. So I'd also like to point out real quick that there's some people who think that Abel was actually actually Abel that was supposed to be the Messiah, but Cain killed him before he got a chance to, and I highly doubt this. Abel was just your run-of-the-mill believer. He was not the son of God, didn't even come from a virgin birth, and while his faith was strong, that doesn't mean he was a perfect human like Jesus was. Definitely not giving me any kind of Messiah vibes at all. He was just some poor schmuck. It does foreshadow what would happen to Jesus, though. I think you can say that much, and maybe that's just some interesting parallelism. Just someone that God saw as innocent was murdered by haters. You can kind of see maybe there's some, they were trying to be oh, look, at the beginning when we could have fixed this immediately, but we couldn't do it ourselves, so Jesus had to come in and do it because only he can do it. It literally only could be Jesus that could be the Messiah. And that's all I would read into that. So moving on. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is Abel your brother?" And Cain famously replied, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" So when God asked what happened, even though he already knows what happened, it kind of reminds me of that that stereotypical couple trope where the woman asks something oh, what'd you do at work? And the guy's oh, work stuff, and then the woman pulls out some damning evidence that he was not in fact at work that day, and it's is this work stuff? And it's just a funny way that I picture it whenever God does something like this. So, you know, if you ever get mad that your partner does this, just remember that this is a God-ordained interrogation tactic, and they are well within their rights to use it. You know, just don't lie to your spouse. Maybe, I don't know. Just a thought. Anyway, so like Adam, God tried to give Cain a chance to come clean, and like Adam, Cain acts like he's faultless. And you know, you really got to admire almost the audacity of Cain right now. You know, he's got to know his dad's history with stuff like this, and he's got to know that he can't get away with anything with God. But you know, to be fair, you know, we all know that we can't hide anything from God, and yet we still try to. You know, maybe, possibly like Cain, we think we're different. Those other people just did it wrong, but we can get away with it because we're smarter than God. Or maybe what we did wasn't that bad, so we don't really need, it's fine. It's, you know, even though like our gut is telling us, like our God is like convicting us that it was wrong, we're like in denial and refusing to believe that and come clean and repent about that. But I think deep down we all know that, you know, we're not smarter than God. What we did was wrong. But it's really more about like the shame factor, and it's the shame of it that makes us hide. You know, we hate admitting fault. We don't, we want to believe that we're perfect, but the evidence against that notion is just so blatant. You know, it's hard to deny. But like, it's okay that we're screw ups, because God gave us an out. He gave us a way to be seen as perfect by him, and really only God's opinion matters about this, you know, and all we got to do is admit we're not perfect and at least attempt to fix those mistakes. But we're not going to be able to like reach God if we're just in constant denial when we do messed up things. So, you know, I think we can all take a lesson from Cain on what not to do, and see, you know, what it is that God prioritizes above all things. You know, it's not doing things perfectly, it's just dependence on him, you know. And later chapters will confirm, you know, works without faith is dead. And one of the most egregious sins is like an empty belief system, where you're just like kind of going through the motions, and you're not really letting like the Spirit like convict you in the way that you need to be convicted. You know, it just gives us this like undeserved justification and entitlement, which can quickly lead to like envy and hypocrisy. You know, our biggest enemy isn't atheism or secularism or whatever like false religion. You know, that's the world. You know, God already conquered the world. You know, what we really need to be on the lookout for is our own hearts and minds. You know, our that's a tongue twister. Our priorities in alignment with God's. Are we being honest, not just with God, but with ourselves? Is our faith really in God, or is it in our own self-righteousness? And are you thinking like, you know, I did X, Y, and Z, so I'm good and saved, you know? Or are you thinking, I trust you to guide me, God? You know, it's just something to chew on. Moving on. So, and the Lord said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground, and now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth." It's very dramatic, Chris. It's deserved, though. So yeah, you know, Cain's curse. It's basically an amplification of Adam's curse. It's hard for Adam to cultivate food now, you know, and now it's like basically impossible for Cain to grow anything at all. You know, Adam was driven from Eden, and Cain's going to be driven from everywhere and have to live like a nomad. Adam like failed once again to teach the people around him the consequences of not being honest with God or listening to God's wisdom, and nor did Cain learn from his father's mistakes. So God's gonna have to hit him a little harder. You know, that's actually a pretty common dog training tactic too. You know, if a if a dog isn't responding to a minor correction, you got to make the correction like a little bit harder, and that usually works, you know, especially when they already know better. Moving on. So Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." So note that even after God calls him out and talks about his brother's blood crying from the ground, Cain isn't showing any remorse for what he did. He goes straight to like, woe is me, how can I go on? You know, he doesn't feel bad about killing his brother like at all. He's only upset that he got caught and now he's being punished for it. You know, he's still focused on himself rather than letting this be a wake-up call to repent. And again, it's hard to admit fault with ourselves, but you know, you can't forget it's always better to turn against yourself than it is to turn against God. Okay? Just don't forget that. So then the Lord said to him, "Not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold." And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest any who found him should attack him. Now, there's no way of knowing what the mark on Cain was, but I like to think it was something like really embarrassing that might make Cain like a social pariah, like some sign that said like, "Oh, this guy sucks, don't come near him," you know, like, "Oh, this guy has rabies." I don't know, but probably not. It was probably just like a, "Hey, God's gonna kill you if you kill this dude," kind of a thing. Or maybe it was just like some symbol that would itself kill anyone that tried anything fishy. You know, it doesn't really matter, but you know, it's fun to speculate. So anyways, a lot of scholars think that the reason God wouldn't let Cain die was because that's just what like merciful gods do when their followers complain about danger, you know, even if it's like God inflicted danger. Others think, you know, God just didn't want to risk the already very low human population shrinking more. I don't subscribe to that theory at all. You know, as the next chapter notes, Adam and Eve had like lots of kids, which also went on to have lots of kids. You know, clearly there was already a pretty decent population since Cain was scared of being murdered by them. I think it just it shows like a lack of faith that God can't make things happen despite human failure. Like that's kind of his whole thing, you know, is just working around human failure. So besides the merciful God trope, and I think the real reason God wouldn't let Cain get murdered, maybe besides not wanting to allow more sibling murder, but like more than that, I think not getting murdered himself was actually an added punishment. So, you know, getting killed so soon after being cursed, you know, it's getting off too easy, you know. God wanted Cain to sit with this curse for a while, you know, giving him ample time to like self-reflect on his life choices and maybe regret some things, you know. At the time of the cursing, Cain was only mad that he got caught. Maybe after some years wandering around the desert, unable to do the thing he used to do so well, which is growing food, maybe he'd become a little more humbled, you know? I think God wanted to give Cain ample time to fully repent. You know, he wanted to give him that extra chance. And maybe he did. Who knows? It's iffy, as we'll see in the next verses, which are Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. So this might confuse some people. So Cain was supposed to wander around forever, but it seems like immediately after being cursed, he just seems to like instantly settle down in some random spot. There's like a chance that the writers of this chapter like simply assumed that we knew that he wandered around for a bit before finding a spot, and they just didn't bother like putting it in. Maybe by being a wanderer or fugitive, God just meant that he couldn't go to any of his family settlements because they all hated him for killing Abel, you know. And maybe Nod was far enough away from his family that he wouldn't be bothered by them, you know. Or maybe Cain eventually did repent and God allowed him to settle somewhere, you know. It's hard to say. I do wonder if there's a deeper meaning behind Cain left God's presence. Like, was that just meant for like that moment, like he literally left, or did he like permanently close his heart off from God forever? Because that would certainly answer the previous question, you know, if we knew. But we can only speculate, you know. Nobody knows anybody's hearts except for God. I personally lean towards God's curse wasn't like some magical thing that caused him to like keep moving, you know. I don't think like people like it, wherever he went, like people would just magically be like, oh, screw that guy, you know, and just like make him go away. I think it was more like a statement of fact after the actual curse of losing his food growing abilities. That makes more sense. You know, like saying like, you know, you killed your family member, so everyone else in the world who is also your family member, they hate you now, and they won't welcome you into any of your lands. Like, obviously, if you kill someone in your family's gonna probably hate you for that forever. So he was just forever ostracized from his family and probably had to wander around looking for a place that wasn't anywhere near them. So that's probably what happened. Moving on. Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. So a lot of people wonder where Cain got his wife, and some people think God made him one. They think God made him one like he did for Adam. But remember that God said only descendants of Adam and Eve could be saved, and a person created outside of that would be outside that scope of salvation, which would end up being a moral dilemma on God's part. You know, does he break his original promise and extend it beyond Adam and Eve's descendants, or does he just screw over these people that had the misfortune of having the wrong DNA? You know, that's not between a rock and a hard place, you know. Some might argue that Eve came from Adam, so they have the same genetic material, and if that happened with Cain, his wife would still be a descendant of Adam and Eve, so it should be fine, you know. But you know, there's two possible problems with that. One is, if you recall from the second chapter video, there's a decent chance Adam was originally intersex, and God simply removed the female parts of him to create Eve. That wouldn't be an option for Cain, who was fully male. The second, if the reason you're pushing this theory is because you're trying to avoid an incest narrative, well, you don't. You know, if Cain's wife is a descendant of Adam and Eve, then by default Cain's wife is Cain's sister, Possibly even Adam and Eve are siblings by that logic. So you get incest either way. So allow me to explain why this is fine. Allow me to explain why incest is okay sometimes. So pretty much all scholars, they do agree that his wife was probably either his sister or his niece, which is I'm kind of hoping it's his sister, because that's slightly better. And he was the sister in the natural way. I don't think God split them up or split Cain up to make two separate genders again. And the scholars, they're okay with this morally, because this was before Moses had outlawed incest in Leviticus, or whichever book it was, probably Leviticus. So morally, there's no official rule against it. God never said not to do it. So also remember that Adam and Eve were genetically perfect. So the reason incest is so looked down upon now, besides the social ick factor, is because it does no favors for the gene pool. At this point, everyone has some kind of likelihood for mutation or disease, be it diabetes, cancer, Down syndrome, whatever, so if you're somebody who is genetically similar, you're amplifying the chance for those bad genes to manifest. Anyone who remembers doing the Punnett squares in biology, you're just increasing that chance for those bad genes to be a real problem. And obviously, the more inbreeding, the more messed up the kids are gonna be. So you want someone as genetically different from you as possible, so those bad genes get diluted. However, with Adam and Eve, they had no genetic mutations to speak of. They were genetically perfect. So you want someone. Sorry, I'm misreading. They were genetically perfect. So their kids were also genetically perfect. That's how genes work. So incest was neither morally nor biologically a problem at that time. It isn't until sometime after the fall that genetic imperfections start popping up, probably due to an increasing amount of pollutants in the atmosphere, or whatever we're putting in our bodies. Who knows? maybe it's just natural degradation. So by the time Moses is making those rules, incest does become a problem, and as we all know, is still a problem to this day. So I hope no one looks at this thinking the Bible is condoning incest now. It was just for that time. So anyone who really wanted to do some incest, sorry, you missed your window. Please don't do that now. Anyways, I hope that makes sense to everyone. There's a bunch of articles about it if that didn't make sense to you, and I'll be linking at least one of them, so you can maybe try to make sense of it on your own time. So moving on. So when Cain built a city, he called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. So quick note before we get into this verse, Cain probably had this wife before he killed Abel, because I imagine it'd be hard for him to find a wife after that, being ostracized from the family and all. But he couldn't grow food, and I assume it was just him and his wife out there, which leads me to believe they either had to do some kind of hunter-gatherer type of thing until Enoch got old enough to farm, or his wife had to work in the fields for him, which, that's cool, woman farmers. But, I guess it depends when he built the city, because I doubt he could do that without agriculture. That's just usually how cities work. It doesn't. It's just some fun thing to imagine. Anyways, this is also some evidence that Cain maybe didn't learn his lesson, not fully, anyways, or maybe just not dedicating. Sorry, I'm tired. This is evidence Cain didn't learn his lesson about, not trying to like rely on God or whatever. So he builds what's probably the first city, and he names it after his son, not, dedicating it to God in some way, as most Jewish cities tend to be named after. Here he builds what's probably the first. Oh, I already said that. I'm so tired right now. So this implies that it's a very man-centered city. It's not a God-centered city. And as we'll start to see, it seems to be driven by how big and amazing people can make something. I think most would agree cities are like the capital of people trying to like make something of themselves, trying to prove themselves in some way, despite the environmental and social downsides cities tend to have. Most people are still like drawn to them. They're drawn to the dazzling lights of human achievement, and obviously, not all people who live in cities are amoral heathens. Some are just born there, or maybe they're just doing some kind of missionary work. I don't know. It's not really meant to be a generalization. The Bible certainly doesn't say you should avoid all cities because they will automatically crush your soul and damn you to hell. There's obvious practical upsides to living in a city. It's just something to be aware of. Cities tend to have a foundation of misplaced ambition, and one should be careful not to fall too deep into that city mentality. In general, like the real thing you should be taking from this is you should consider why you are doing the things you're doing. What are you trying to accomplish? Is it something that's beneficial to everyone, or are you just trying to prove yourself? Are your actions God-centered? And like what kind of company do you keep, where like what are the people around you feeding you, and your mentality? Don't forget that Christianity is not works based. You don't have to prove yourself to anyone, not even yourself, and technically not God. God doesn't need you to prove yourself to him. He only requires your faith. So just keep that in mind. I'm also not saying you should just live in a bubble. Obviously I'm very anti-bubble, but you gotta be aware of like the energy that's coming in and out. That's all I'm trying to say. And I'm using the city. I'm trashing the city atmosphere to do it. Anyway, moving on. So, to Enoch was born Irad, and Irad fathered Mehujael, and Mehujael fathered Methushael, and Methushael fathered Lamech, and Lamech took 2 wives. The name of the one was Ada, which means pleasure or ornament, by the way, and the name of the other, Zillah, which that means shade, possibly implying that she had like beautiful hair or beautiful clothes. So Ada bore Jabal. He was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. His brother's name was Jubal, and he was the father of all who play the lyre and pipe. Zillah also bore Tubal-Cain. He was the forger of all instruments of bronze and iron. The sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah, which means loveliness, by the way. So, there's a good chunk of archaeologists and ancient human studiers that highly doubt the chronology of this part. It's basically implying that after 8 generations of human existence, people figured out how to make musical instruments and work with metal, even though most archaeologists put such things like a few million years after the first humans show up. The Enduring Word commentary would like to note, somewhat passive aggressively, but probably fairly, that archaeologists can only speculate on what has been preserved, and there aren't many things preserved from that time. In fact, some historians speculate that about 97% of human history has been completely lost to time. And it only gets worse the further back you go. So it's not that whatever found ancient object is the first for that time. It's that whatever ancient object is the oldest that you found. But to be fair to archaeologists, try to give them a bone. There's also some biblical scholars that say, Hebrew writers, sometimes they'll edit the genealogy down a little, either to save time, or maybe they didn't have access to the full genealogy. They just kind of had these are the important people. It's kind of like how we say we're the sons and daughters of Adam and Eve, even though there's a lot of generations between us and Adam and Eve, and there's no possible way for Adam and Eve, for us to be Adam and Eve's literal children. But it's quicker than reciting the full genealogy. We probably don't even know the full I would highly doubt anyone knows the full genealogy from Adam and Eve to wherever you are right now. But we know that we're descended from Adam and Eve, so that's just what we say. It's just like a little shortcut. so this could be that also. But for those who want to take a more literal interpretation, as the next chapter will show, people had an average lifespan ranging from 100 to even 1,000 years of age, and that could also be hyperbole, but who knows? But if again we're taking the literal interpretation, there were people who were living to be about 1,000 years old, and there's just no telling how advanced these instruments were. Most likely they were very primitive, but who knows? If you're alive for 1,000 years, you're probably very smart, and you maybe can figure things out. Excuse me. But you could go either way. I think it's probably reasonable to think that an ancient civilization could have figured some things out in the span of 800 to 8,000 years, and then they just have all their progress wiped by the flood, and we kind of don't have any evidence of it now. People are more capable than people give people credit for. Especially if they were the descendants of Cain, ever the ambitious one. And clearly Cain's pride and selfish ambitions carried on to future generations, where they all just collectively focused on what they could do by themselves rather than what God could do for them. And most likely it gave them a truly amazing city, but at the cost of salvation, as we will later see. Human drive and ingenuity, it can only get you so far. All cities turn into slums eventually, no matter how great they are, but God's kingdom, that is a forever, that is truly a utopia forever. So by the way, I'm not trying to say that you should never try to create things. Creating things is awesome. I'm creating something right now. God is literally the creator that made the whole universe, so he's not gonna have a problem with his literal image bearers creating these grand and complex things. Just try to consider your motivations behind it is all. Never lose sight of the light. Anyway, so moving on in the verses. So Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice. You wives of Lamech, listen to what I say. She's so pushy. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is 77-fold. So Lamech, which might mean conqueror, we're not sure. He is the Bible's first recorded polygamist, being in a city that was so focused on human achievement and glory. Lamech didn't learn much from his ancestors, maybe at least not from their consequences or anything. His wives and daughter, they all have names implying like great outward beauty. So he clearly loved beautiful things, especially in excess. So now when I first read this, it kind of sounded like Lamech was scared of getting an even worse curse than Cain. But reading the commentaries and seeing like people were saying that he was boasting, I went back and reread it, and I did misread it. So Cain's revenge, not Cain's curse. Cain's revenge was a level 7. So it was either Cain lashing out at Abel or God striking anyone who kills Abel was the level 7. I'm not totally sure which one, but probably the God one because of the parallelism. Meanwhile, Lamech's lashing out was 70 times 7. If he's referring to how God would strike anyone down, then it's definitely an example of how we twist God's words to justify our own sin. God didn't say Cain could kill anyone that even slightly attacks him. He said that he himself, God, would kill them back. It's very much like how when you're disciplining one of your kids and then the other kid tries to jump in and add to it, and then you gotta tell them to knock it off because they're kids that don't know how to discipline with compassion and wisdom, it's very annoying when that happens. My dogs actually do that sometimes. My dogs are children. Anyways, so, it's something that still happens today. People try to do God's job for him, but God does not need your help, and you're honestly making it worse, actually. Let God deal with the sinners himself. Everything you do, it's maybe self-defense. I don't think what happened to Lamech was self-defense, so it sounds like he got in a scuffle and he just took it way too far. Anyways, just another quick note before we move on. It's also very interesting that Lamech says these numbers 70 times 7, like specifically, since Jesus will later say to forgive those who wrong you with that same amount. So feels like that's on purpose. I'm pretty sure that was on purpose. Moving on. The Bible's cool. Bible is a very cool literary device. I'm gonna go on a quick off the script. I've always felt like there's like 3 ways that you need to read the Bible. You need to read as a legal document, as a like a historical kind of document, and also as a I want to say like a literary book, not in the sense that it's like fiction, but in the sense, when you're reading like a really good work of fiction, you get this, when you're reading like a really good book and it just sticks with you, and you get like emotional or spiritual wisdom out of it, and that's what I get from that. So that's what I like to do. Anyways, moving on. We're almost done. So going back to Adam knew his wife again. And she bore a son and called his name Seth. For she said, God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. Sorry, it was hard to say that straight. So just a quick note, Seth was likely the first kid born after Abel's death. not the one born after Abel. As we've seen, there were a lot of kids outside of Cain and Abel, and Adam and Eve probably didn't stop having kids in the 20 plus years it took for Cain to murder Abel. Seth is also noted as having more of a righteous line than Cain's, as we'll see in the next chapter. So he really was an apt replacement for Abel. So there's just like a quick clarification. Last verse. So to Seth also a son was born, and he called his name Enosh. At that time, people began to call upon the name of the Lord. So I just think it's so funny how similar Seth and Cain's kids' names were. Like, why? And I actually Googled it, and Enoch means trained, vowed, dedicated, profound, Well, Enosh, similar to Adam, actually means man, mortal person, which is extra funny to me, because Cain clearly expected great things from his son. His kid was his pride and joy, while Seth was like, he's a person, he's alright, I guess, And if that doesn't show you like the vast differences in humility between these two, I don't know what will. So anyways, final note on this chapter. Despite all the sin coming from Adam and Eve and Cain, which caused much cursing on humanity, people still called God's name, which implies that, this downfall with Cain and Adam and Eve, this just like series of like people messing up and not doing good things, sinning as the kids call it. After this downfall was what could be considered the first of many spiritual revivals in the world, and I think that's a nice little hopeful message to end on. The world goes through these cycles of good and bad, and we are definitely in the bad times now. I think we don't need to argue about that, but I really do believe that like another revival is inevitable, and a time of peace is gonna happen eventually. This won't be forever. Like, it will never be forever, and ultimately at some point the peace is gonna be forever, and then the cycle will end. But much like Cain following Adam, it's probably gonna get worse first. But hang in there and keep calling on God's name. He will deliver us, eventually. So that is it for this one. Is there anybody actually watching this? Woo. I don't know. I'm gonna it looks like there's one person watching, but I'm not super sure. So just to be safe, it looks like there's somebody watching. Hello, person that's watching. So now that the talking is done, I'm going to now make a time for questions or additional comments. So anyone who has any questions or comments, leave them here. I'm actually gonna play some music while you're. Oh, hey, it's my mother. My mother was watching. Hello. She just commented that it was her. Hi, Mom. Thanks for showing up. So Mom, if you have any questions, feel free to send them, and I can play some musics or whatever while you do that. It's gonna be like an old classical song, so hopefully it doesn't get the copyright thing. Let's find out. So you do that, and we'll come back, and if not, we'll just move on from there. Okay. I'm gonna play music now. Hi. I just realized you can totally keep doing questions and comments, but also if you had prayer requests, you could also put those in, just because there's such a small audience. So Mom, who is watching, if you have questions, comments, or prayer requests, good or bad, do that. Okay, I'm gonna continue playing the music now. Bye. we're done with it now. So Mom, I know you sent me a bunch of messages, and I did see them. I was just waiting for the song to be over to address them. What was I saying? Yes. So also, yes, I do realize that my sign looks backwards in the video. I didn't know it would do that, and there's nothing I can do about that, honestly. That's just how it looks when you're recording it. So I'll probably have to make a new sign that is backwards so that when I show it, it's not backwards. So that's something to look forward to next time. Mom messaged me her prayer request. I don't know if that means she wants me to do the prayer request quietly, but like, this is a live video, Mom. You should know that this is public. So I'm just gonna do it publicly, and you can yell at me about it later. So I'm gonna pray for Mom's thing, which is, you know, she just moved to Hawaii. Look, good for her. You know, but you know, she does need to she does need to get settled, and it's always like stressful being in a new place. So we're gonna pray that she, you know, finds a good church there and can maybe like find some friends and whatever, and just find her groove in Hawaii. I also previously in the week, I've heard that some family members in Oregon were kind of sick with the stomach flu. So we're gonna be praying that they get some healing from that, and also for like my own thing. Or actually, I shouldn't do my own thing yet, because those two lovely women who have health issues, they still have health issues. So we're gonna pray for them also, and maybe also pray for my dad, who also is going through stuff. But for me, for the church thing, I've actually been feeling a little bit better about it lately. So I don't know, I might not pray for the wrath of God this time. But you know, it's just to be safe, I might still ask for some mentally healing stuff about that. So we're gonna do it now. We're gonna do the prayer now. So we're doing it now. Okay, so dear lovely God of mine, please, also before I get to the please, thank you for being such a wonderful God, and you're the best, and we all love you. And if you could do stuff for us, that'd be great. The things that we specifically would like you to do, there's these two women who been dealing with a lot of mental and emotional things. You know, physically can't really do a whole lot right now, so I just pray that you are, you know, you kind of remind them of your presence and control in the situation. You know, let her kind of realize that, you know, this pain, it's temporary, and there's probably a reason for it. Not like a corrective, but like just like it's just that time for pain, you know, and just help them keep their sights set on you, and reveal like whichever direction you want them to go through, and, you know, either physically, spiritually, or emotionally, you know, keep them from being discouraged with your love and care, you know, and thank you for bringing these lovely women to my life. And, oh God, thank you for you know, kind of making me feel a little bit better about the whole church situation. I feel like I might be just disassociating, but, you know, thanks for giving our brains the ability to disassociate, if that's what it is. But, you know, God, it was a pretty good day today, and I just want to thank you for that. And even though I was really tired and kind of annoyed at times, there was like a feeling of peace, and I think that was great. So thanks for that. I'm just in case, you know, for my feelings regarding the church, you know, I still trust you to, you know, do what you feel needs to be done to like remedy the situation, and I'll just leave it at that. I also want to pray for my dad, who's also going through like a little bit of a time. He seems to be getting a little bit better, but, you know, I don't want to make that assumption. So, you know, I want to keep sending healing energy towards him, you know, guide him, you know, give him your wisdom, you know, on whatever it is you want him to do in those situations. I'd also like to pray for my family in Oregon who needs healing for the stomach flu. You know, help them manage the symptoms and keep it from getting worse. You know, help them feel your comfort while they are going through that. Stomach flus are definitely not very nice. So, you know, kind of help them be able to like push through the pain and make it not too bad. I'd also like to pray for my lovely mother, who is so lovely, and she moved to Hawaii, which is so cool because I get to visit her in Hawaii. That's what that means. And I just want to pray that, you know, being in this like new, you know, she went from like a very like small town in Washington to like what seems like a bigger city, but also kind of a quiet, but it's definitely very different from Port Angeles. So I just pray you help her kind of get settled in, help her find a church that really speaks to her and her family's needs, or spiritual and emotional needs, and, you know, just help remind her that, you know, there's going to be seasons of like just feeling like alone and lost, especially when you're in new places, and just let her, help her feel your presence in this time in her life, and help her to kind of maybe like rely on you just like a little bit more, so she doesn't feel like too lonely. You know, just help her remember that you are always there even when it feels like you're not, and make the times where it feels like you're not less. I hope that makes, you know what I'm trying to say. You know, just help my mother get settled in and make some connections, you know, guide her to some people that can really, you know, enrich her life, and that she can enrich their lives as well. And that is all I can think of for prayer. So thank you, God, and amen. We're done. So like I said earlier, I got to do the other worship song separately. So if you would like to hang out for a quick minute while I end this video, and then we start another video where we do the live worship. If you're watching this on YouTube, just scroll down to the bottom, or to the description. I know how YouTube works. Go to the description and follow the link for the loud worship song, and you can jam out to that. But for the people, aka my mother, who is watching this, if you would like to jam out with me to the loud worship song, if you just hang tight, stand by momentarily, and I don't know what watching the live, I guess just stay on this page and the live video shows up again. I don't know how it looks for you guys, but yeah, I'm gonna end the video now. Okay, so see you guys for the loud worship song. If you're gonna be there, I don't care, I'm gonna do it anyways. Okay, bye.